I thought I had married the woman of my dreams, but all she dreamed was my death. I loved her. I believed her. I didn't see her slowly plotting my disappearance. Black Small Square, it all started with little things, small changes in her behavior. Looks I didn't understand. Black Small Square, but then I saw something that changed everything. Black Small Square, something that made me understand either I would expose her or I would simply be gone. And I chose to fight. The beginning of suspicions. We had been together for 3 years. Black Small Square, the perfect marriage. The perfect family. Black Small Square, so I thought. Black Small Square, I worked day and night to provide her with a life of luxury. But she didn't just want money. She wanted everything. Black Small Square, the house. The bank. My stocks. Black Small Square, she didn't want a divorce. She wanted me dead. The first warning sign. It all started with dinner. Black Small Square, every time she cooked, I would smell a strange taste in the food. Black Small Square, when I started to refuse, she started to insist. Black Small Square, I started to feel worse, but the doctors couldn't find anything. Then I decided to get tested. One evening, I forgot my plate on the kitchen table, and in the morning, I took the leftovers to the lab. Black Small Square, I didn't know what I was looking for. Black Small Square, I didn't want to believe the worst. Black Small Square, but the result, it destroyed me. There were microdoses of poison in my food. Someone was slowly poisoning me, but I already knew who. Her secret lover. I started to watch. Black Small Square, she spoke on the phone in a whisper when she thought I couldn't hear. Black Small Square, she often went to see a friend and didn't pick up the phone. Black Small Square, I installed a hidden camera in our living room when she was away. And here's what I saw. She didn't just want to get rid of me. She had a lover. Black Small Square, he would come into our house when I wasn't there. Black Small Square, they talked about me as if I were already dead. Black Small Square, she told him, just a little longer and it will all be ours. She was preparing for the final blow, but she didn't know that her game had already been revealed. I set my trap. She thought she was in control, but I started my game. Black Small Square, I pretended not to suspect anything. Black Small Square, I pretended to be going on a business trip. But I didn't go anywhere. Black Small Square, I hid and waited for her to make her final move. She thought I was already her victim, but I was her sentence. She wanted me to slowly disappear. But I made her believe that her plan was working. I sat in the darkness of my office, clutching the test results that proved I had been poisoned. This was not a dream, not paranoia, not a figment of my weary mind. This was reality. The woman I loved, the one I had once considered the most precious person in my life, was actually a cold-blooded predator, methodically destroying me. I remembered her last look that night, when she had brought me dinner. A gentle smile, a slight tilt of her head, a warm, almost lulling, "You like my pie, don't you?" I remembered her sitting across from me, watching me swallow my food. I didn't know then that every morsel was part of her plan. But now I knew, and I couldn't just sit back and wait for her to finish her game. I had to act. The role of the victim. I couldn't expose her right away. If she was already ready to kill, who knew what else she was capable of? So I decided to play her game. I pretended not to suspect anything. I would wake up in the morning and kiss her forehead gratefully. I would come home from work and tell her how much I missed her. I would eat her food, but I would always get rid of it before I did. I had to convince her that I was still the perfect victim. And it worked. I could see it in her eyes. Calm, confidence, a sense of control. She believed that everything was going according to her plan. But the biggest mistake manipulators make is thinking they're the smartest. I collected evidence. I recorded our conversations. I set up hidden cameras in the house. I didn't just wait. I prepared her downfall. He's her lover. Once I deliberately told her I was going on a business trip. Her reaction was almost imperceptible, but I knew her well enough to notice the small details. A barely perceptible dilation of her pupils, a slight movement of her fingers, as if she was already calculating something in her head, a smile she couldn't quite hide. "Are you going to be gone for a long time?" she asked, calmly helping herself to food. I noticed that she hadn't even tried to force me to eat today. That meant the poison had already taken effect. She thought I was weak enough. 2 days. I'll be so busy. I don't even know if I'll have time to call, I replied, as if not suspecting anything. She nodded, looking down at her plate, but I knew she already had a plan in mind. I left the house, but I didn't go far. I parked nearby and waited. 3 hours later, when she was sure I was already far away, a car pulled up to my house. He got out of it. Her lover. I had seen his face on the camera footage, but now I saw him in real life. Tall, fit, a few years younger than me. The one to whom she had given her true love. I watched him enter the house as she opened the door and threw herself into his arms. I watched her kiss him with a passion that hadn't been there in our relationship for a long time. I was no longer torn by anger. I no longer felt despair or pain, only cold determination. Now I was ready for the next step, her biggest mistake. When I got home, she greeted me with the same smile. "How was the trip?" she asked, helping me take off my jacket. "It was hard, but it's okay." I looked into her eyes as if nothing had happened. She looked so pleased. She believed her plan was working. And then I decided to strike first. By the way, I forgot to tell you. I decided to change my insurance policy. I'm going to notary tomorrow to update all the documents. She froze. "Update?" "Yes. I don't want all the money to go to you anymore. I think it's better to do things differently. What do you think?" I saw a moment of terror in her eyes. She wasn't ready for this. Her plan was falling apart. "You're kidding, right?" I pretended not to notice her excitement and just shrugged. "No, I'm completely serious. It's better for everyone." I saw her fingers grip the edge of the table. She was trying to control herself. But I already knew that there was only one question on her mind. What do I do next? Her plan was almost complete, but now it was falling apart. She had to hurry. I knew it. And now all I could do was wait for her to make her final move. And as soon as she does it, I will strike. She thought she had already won. But I pushed her into making a fatal mistake. I could see her hands shaking as she pretended to chop vegetables for dinner. She tried to control herself. But I knew inside her panic was raging. I had set this little safety trap on purpose. I wanted to make her nervous. I wanted her to understand that her plan wasn't as perfect as she thought. And she did. "Maybe we shouldn't rush into making changes," she said softly, her eyes still on the knife she was using to chop carrots. "Why? It's just paperwork," I replied indifferently, taking a sip of water. Her shoulders tensed. She was already calculating a new plan. She needed to act quickly. I let her know that, and now I waited for her to make her next move. She speeds up her thrusts. I began to notice the changes. What she had done slowly and carefully before was now more direct. She no longer waited for me to pick up my food. She would place the plate right in front of me, watching my every move. She became more gentle, more caring. She spent more time at home making sure I was doing well. She no longer left her phone unattended. It was obvious. She had something planned for the near future. I had to act quickly. My second stroke, a test of desperation. I decided to take one more step. This time, I wanted to test her readiness for the final step. I faked a sharp pain in my chest. As we were eating dinner, I took a deep breath, clutched my heart, and pretended to be choking. She came running to me faster than I expected, but not with fear in her eyes, not with the panic that a loving wife should feel. Her reaction was different. She looked as if she didn't know what to do. Her eyes darted around the room, as if she were searching for a solution, but didn't know if it was time to act. Her confusion betrayed her. She wasn't ready. I had made her think I was weakening faster than she had planned. That meant one thing. She would accelerate her plan, and this was my chance. The last straw. She couldn't wait any longer. The next morning, I made another move. I called her from work and told her I had heard bad news from the doctor. I heard her hold her breath for a few seconds. "What do you mean?" "They're sending me for a full medical examination. They want to know what's going on with me." Silence. "That's good, isn't it?" I asked. I could picture her face at that moment. She knew the doctors could find the cause of my weakness. She knew it would expose her. Her answer was the best confirmation that I was right. Maybe that's unnecessary? You said yourself that you were just tired. She no longer tried to hide her fear. She knew that now she had to act immediately. I forced her to accelerate her plan. And now all that remained was to wait for her to make her main mistake. She couldn't wait any longer. I could see her preparing to strike the final blow. My traps had worked. She was cornered. I could see it in her eyes, in the way she had lost control of her emotions. Her plan was crumbling, and she knew that if she didn't act now, it would all be for naught. I knew that in the coming days, she would make a decisive move. I just didn't know what it would be. But I was prepared for any scenario, preparing for the final move. She had looked tense all day. She had been walking around the house with her phone in her hands, constantly checking something, her lips pursed, and when I asked her what had happened, she would just smile. Just a little tired, love. I knew she wasn't tired. She was scared, and she was making a decision. I gave her time. I didn't question her. I made her feel like she was still in control. But I already knew that this would be the last night I would play the victim. The dinner that would be my last. She had cooked everything herself, not even letting me enter the kitchen. I want to make something special for you today, she whispered in my ear as she set the plate in front of me. I looked down at the food. She hadn't changed her strategy. The same food, the same little tricks she used to try to hide the taste of poison. I pushed the plate away. What's wrong? Her voice was too even. Not hungry. My head hurts. I saw her eyes change for a second. This annoyed her. She had been waiting for this moment. She knew there was no more time. And then she did something unexpected. She took my spoon, scooped up some food, and ate it. See? It's okay, she smiled. But I knew she was testing me. She knew I might suspect something, so she wanted to make me relax. But I didn't break. I got up from the table. I'm going to lie down. Do you want me to get you some tea? No, I just want some peace. I could see that this was the last chance she had given herself. She couldn't wait any longer. She knew that either I would die tonight or I would go to the doctor tomorrow and everything would be revealed. That meant she would go to extreme measures. I had to be the first to act. My trap, I locked myself in my bedroom, but I didn't go to sleep. I waited. I waited for her to make her next move. And she didn't hesitate. I heard her approach the door. She was breathing softly, as if checking to see if I was asleep. I heard the floor creak slightly as she turned back. A moment later, I heard the door of the living room closet open. Something was taken out. I felt my heart start to beat faster. This was her last card. I grabbed my phone, pressed the record button, and quietly opened the door. And what I saw confirmed everything. She was standing at the kitchen table. In her hands was a small bottle. She opened it and slowly poured it into a cup. My tea. Her fingers weren't shaking. She was already past the point of fear. She was ready. She took the cup and went into the bedroom. I threw myself back into bed, pretending to be asleep. Sweetheart, her voice was soft. I didn't answer. I made you some tea. It'll help you feel better. I opened my eyes and looked at her. I could see her forcing herself not to look away. She believed this would be the end, but she didn't know it was just the beginning. I slowly got up and picked up the cup. I pretended to take a sip, but suddenly I stopped and looked her straight in the eye. What's in this tea? I saw her expression change. For a split second before she could pull herself together, her eyes widened in horror, and then I realized that now her plan had failed completely. She knew I knew the truth. But now she's going to learn what it means to lose everything. I sat on the bed, holding the cup of tea she just brought me. She stood before me, her eyes intently following my every move. Her fingers were trembling slightly, though she tried to hide it. She didn't know I'd already recorded the video of her pouring the poison. She didn't know I'd been watching her every move the entire time. But a thought was already forming in her head. He suspected something. I could see her trying to read my face. Would I take a sip? Would I say something? Or would I just surrender to her as she expected? I slowly set the cup down on the nightstand. Her face contorted into a barely perceptible grimace for a moment, like a predator about to pounce. But I beat her to it. Don't you want to try it yourself? She hadn't expected the question. Her breathing quickened. I made this especially for you. It's your favorite tea. I nodded. If it's so good, why don't you take a sip first? Her hand twitched slightly. I could see her forcing herself to remain calm. Don't you trust me? Her voice sounded foreign to me. Cold, strained, with a false tenderness. I took the cup and held it out to her. If you really want to feel better, show me that I can trust you. She froze. In that moment, I knew she understood. I know everything. The first stage of her fall. I got out of bed, looking her straight in the eye. She took a step back. What's wrong with you, my love? Her voice trembled. What about me? Everything's fine. But you look tense. She tried to hold my gaze, but I could see her eyes darting around the room, as if searching for a way out. I decided to go even further. By the way, I wonder how your friend is doing. I saw him today. She tensed up sharply. What? Who are you talking about? Your lover. Don't act stupid. She lost control of her breathing. I saw her chest rise and fall rapidly. She tried to compose herself. But, were you following me? I smiled. Of course. What? You thought you could lead him to our house and I wouldn't notice. She looked at me, confused, as if trying to find the right words. But she was lost before she could even begin to speak. You got it all wrong. I cut her off sharply. Oh, I got it all right. Like the fact that you've been poisoning me for months. I saw her face turn white. She opened her mouth, but couldn't say anything. For the first time in a while, she lost control of the situation. For the first time, she realized that she was no longer manipulating me. And that was just the beginning of her horror. Stage 2. Complete loss of control. She tried to act differently. Honey, this is crazy. Someone said something to you. I pulled out my phone and turned on the video. She froze when she saw herself on the screen. How she opens the cupboard. How she takes out the bottle. How she tilts it over my cup. How she slowly stirs the tea with a spoon. How she walks into the bedroom with a smile on her face. She flinched as if she had been punched in the face. What is this? What is this? This is your sentence. I took a step forward, and she backed away like a frightened animal. I can send this to the police right now. Can you imagine yourself behind bars? I could see her shaking. Please. Please, what? Come on, tell me. What did you want to do? I picked up the phone, dialed the police number, and pressed the call button. She screamed, Stop. I stopped short and looked at her. She was breathing heavily, her hands pressed to her face. I saw something in her eyes that I hadn't seen before. Real fear. She wasn't trying to play anymore. She knew it was over. But I wasn't going to give her a chance to escape. I was playing my game to the end. The last step is her final downfall. She dropped to her knees. Please, don't do this. Why? You wanted to do this to me, didn't you? I looked her up and down. She was crying. I had been waiting for this moment. I wanted to see her collapse. I'll do anything. Just don't give up on me. You'll do anything? I slowly leaned in and forced her to look me in the eyes. You won't do anything anymore, because now I'm the one in control of your life. She closed her eyes, breathing heavily. I let her know she was defeated. I let her know she wasn't in control anymore. I wasn't her victim anymore. I was her nightmare. She thought I would just destroy her, but I did something much worse. She sat on the floor, crushed by fear and despair. I looked at her with cold calm. Just a few days ago, she had been sure that she was in complete control of my life, that she could decide when I should die, how I should die, and what I would get after it. But now everything had changed. Now she was the one being controlled, and she understood it. I could see it in her eyes. I could see her brain working at the limit of what was possible, trying to find a way out. But there was no way out, because I had left her no chance. Her last attempt to escape. Please. Her voice sounded broken. Please, what? She lowered her head, clenched her fingers, as if trying to force herself to say something right. I made a mistake. I smiled. A mistake? Is that what you call poisoning me for months? Trying to kill me? sleeping with my friend, and making plans with my money. She closed her eyes. Her lips tightened, like someone who had just realized that excuses no longer worked. I was out of my mind. Oh, no, you were out of your mind. You knew exactly what you were doing. She winced. The pressure became unbearable for her. I picked up my phone and showed her another video, a conversation with her lover. Give him another week or two. He can barely walk. Then it'll be ours, she said in the audio recording. Her eyes widened. It was the last thing she expected. I saw her world crumbling before my eyes. You wrote down. Yes, I have everything. Every word you said. Every move you made. Every crime you committed. I paused. I gave her a chance to realize how far she had come. And now you have two options. She looked at me in horror. One is I'll just turn this over to the police. You're going to be in jail for a long time. Life or something very close to that. She flinched again. I took a step toward her and crouched down so that our eyes were level. But there's another option. She clenched her fists. I knew she was ready to seize any opportunity now. I'm not turning these records over to the police. But instead, you disappear. You lose everything. All your money. All your comforts. You take nothing from our house. You leave without a penny and never come back. I'll make your name a disgrace. I'll take away everyone you know. I'll destroy you so much that even your lover will turn away. I paused and looked her in the eye. You either rot in prison, or you disappear from this town, never to return, completely destroyed. The choice is yours. I gave her a moment. She didn't answer. I knew there was a real storm brewing in her head right now. Prison was the end. Disappearing was a chance to survive, even if it meant losing everything she wanted. I already knew which option she would choose, and I knew it would be worse than death for her. She looked up at me again. You can't do this. I laughed. Oh, believe me, I can. She held her breath. I could see her calculating the risks. There was nothing she could do. No trump cards. No chance of salvation. And then she said what I had been waiting for. I'm leaving. I nodded. Tomorrow, at 8 in the morning. If I see you here at 9, the police will have the video. She was breathing heavily, as if trying not to lose control of herself. If I leave, will you leave me alone? I looked at her coldly. You destroyed everything you could, but it's up to me when it's over. Remember that. She closed her eyes. I knew what she felt. It was the most terrifying moment of her life. She thought she would have my life, but she lost hers, her disappearance. The next morning I woke up and saw her suitcase by the door. She was standing in a dark jacket, pale, with a blank look in her eyes. I didn't even say goodbye. I just closed the door behind her. I didn't know where she was going. I didn't care anymore. Only one thing mattered. I won. I survived. I destroyed her, leaving no chance for revenge. She lost everything she could have. And now my life was in my hands again. I thought I was finally free from her. But she hadn't said her last word yet. She was gone. I stood by the window and watched the taxi take her out of my life. Part of me expected her to try something at the last moment, that she would scream, fall to her knees, beg for another chance. But she didn't say a word. Her eyes were empty, tired, destroyed. I knew that this was the biggest blow to her. She wanted everything, but she was left with nothing. I felt victorious. I had survived. I had proven to her that she no longer had power over me. And now I could live again without fear of her poisoning my food or hatching a new murder plan. Yes or not? The first warning. The next few days, I felt a strange sense of relief. I ate without fear. I could fall asleep without waking up from the thought of a murderer lying next to me. But somewhere deep inside me, there was a restlessness. Would she really just resign herself to it? Would she really leave with her head down and never come back? I had made her run, but I knew what she was like. She never accepted defeat. I had learned to underestimate her, and I was not going to make that mistake again. So when 3 days later I received a text message from an unknown number, it didn't surprise me. You think it's over? This is just the beginning. A chill ran through my body. It was her. I was sure of it. Her return. I sat in my office, staring at the message. I should have just deleted it. But something made me answer. What else do you want? The answer came instantly. Want to know who you're fighting? Let's meet. I didn't feel fear. I felt something worse. Anger. This woman wanted to destroy me. She betrayed me, poisoned me, planned my death. And even after I trampled her, she still had the audacity to think she could come back. I accepted her challenge. Where and when? A few minutes later, the answer came. You know where to find me. I clenched the phone in my hand. I knew, and I no longer intended to simply defend myself. This time I will destroy her completely. Night meeting. I arrived at the place that had once been our favorite restaurant. Now it was the place where I would put the final stop. She was already waiting. She looked different. Thin, pale, her once luxurious hair tied in a messy bun, but there was still a dark spark in her eyes. You came after all, she whispered as I sat down opposite her. I came to hear you humiliate yourself, I replied coldly. She smiled, but it wasn't a smile I knew. It was a smile of someone who knew something you didn't. You do realize that you can't erase me from your life that easily? I didn't answer. I just watched her lean closer. You've taken everything from me, but I can still take something from you. I clenched my fists. You have nothing. Oh, don't be so sure, she said, enjoying herself. I know how to make your life hell, and I will. I tried to read her gaze. It wasn't fear, it wasn't despair. It was something else. Something that made me realize she hadn't played her last card yet. What are you up to? She laughed. Wait and see. I grabbed her wrist. She flinched, but she didn't pull her hand away. You can't break me anymore, I said, squeezing her fingers. She leaned closer and whispered, if you think that, then you've already lost. I let her go. She stood up, met my gaze, and left. I sat there in silence. And for the first time in a long time, a real cold fear ran through me. What was she up to? Had I really outplayed her? Or was this just the beginning of another game, this time with me as the victim? I thought it was over. But she came back to make me her victim. I sat in the darkness of my office, digesting our encounter. She hadn't just come back. She was up to something. She wasn't trying to play the helpless victim anymore. She wasn't pleading. She wasn't making excuses. She had given me a warning, and I knew it wasn't just words. I had outsmarted her once, but she wasn't one to just give up. What was she up to? I had to find out, and I had to find out fast. The first blow, my business was in jeopardy. The next morning when I walked into my office, I was met with intense stares from my colleagues. Did you see that? My partner asked, tossing his tablet onto the table. I leaned over and saw the headline. Businessman defrauds investors. Secret schemes exposed. What? I started reading. The article was written as if I was involved in some kind of financial fraud. There were screenshots of supposedly my correspondence, documents I had never seen, evidence that did not exist. But it was so professionally written that it looked believable. I felt anger boiling inside me. It was her. I knew it. She could not destroy me physically, but she knew she could try to destroy my reputation. And if people believed it, it would be worse than death. Her new tactic, using lies as a weapon. In the evening, I received another blow. I got a call from a journalist I knew. Someone is sending material about you to every newsroom in town. If the story gets out, it's going to be hard for you to justify yourself. I knew this was just the beginning. She wasn't planning to act covertly anymore. Now she was attacking openly. She was using lies. She wanted to make me an enemy of society. If she couldn't kill me physically, she would kill me socially. I had to stop her. But how? She was playing hard to get. And this time I couldn't just make her disappear. I had to do more. I had to outsmart her again. My counterattack. I knew she wasn't working alone. She had a plan. She had access to information she couldn't get on her own. She had someone helping her. And I had to find that person. I picked up the phone and called my private investigator friend. I need to find out who she's working with. Find out everything. I wasn't playing the victim anymore. I wasn't waiting for her to make the next move. I was attacking. The answer came faster than I expected. The detective called back 2 days later. I found something interesting. What exactly? He paused. Her new ally is your former business partner. I clenched my fists. I knew he had problems with me after I broke his contract with him, but I didn't expect him to stoop to this level. She had found someone who hated me as much as she did. She wasn't acting alone anymore. Now she had resources. She had people. And if I don't stop her now, I was losing everything. She thought she would win this time. But I already knew how to destroy her once and for all. She attacked openly. I could no longer ignore it. I could no longer act quietly. If I did not respond right now, my reputation would be destroyed. She knew it. She felt her power. She believed she was in control of the game now. But there was one thing she had not considered. I was ready for this moment. And this time I would make sure she could never come back. I struck at the very heart of her plan. The detective had found every detail of her collaboration with my former business partner. The correspondence, the financial transfers, their secret meetings. She had used his resources to fabricate lies about me. But he was not as smart as she was. He left traces, evidence. I knew what she was planning next. She was preparing a public scandal. She wanted me to give up. But now I had something better. I had a weapon that would destroy her. The trap she fell into. I arranged a meeting with her partner. He thought I didn't know everything. He thought I would crawl up to him and start begging him to stop this circus. I sat across from him in the restaurant, calmly looking into his self-confident face. Let's be honest, he said, taking a sip of whiskey. You're not going to win this battle. The press is already on your side. Your investors are starting to doubt you. This is just the beginning. I smiled. Do you really think she won't use you the same way she used me? He shrugged. It doesn't matter anymore. The main thing is that you lost. I leaned closer. You know what's really interesting? You're sitting here right now and you don't even realize you're already trapped. He frowned. I slowly pulled out my phone and turned on the recording. His face went white when he heard his own voice. The main thing is to destroy his reputation. If everything goes according to plan, he'll lose everything. After that, we'll split what's left. I turned off the recording and looked up at him. The police will have this tomorrow morning, and all your affairs will be public. He froze, his hands gripping his glass so tightly that it almost cracked. You're bluffing. I pulled out another phone. Live. People were already listening to our conversation. He realized it when he saw the comments pouring onto the screen. His lungs tightened in panic. I slowly stood up. Game over. I left him there, completely devastated. But I knew the real blow was yet to come. She would be next. The final blow. She lost everything. The next morning the news broke. The reporters were destroying her partner. His company was collapsing. He tried to justify himself, but it was too late. And she was sinking with him. Her name appeared in the articles. The woman who tried to frame her own husband. Her plan failed, and now she's on the run. The scandalous truth about the wife who wanted to destroy her husband. Her phones no longer worked. She lost her connection. She lost her ability to somehow escape. She was in absolute social exile. I calmly drank my coffee, watching all this on the news. She wanted to erase me from my life. But now she was gone forever. I thought she was gone from my life. But true predators don't give up without a final blow. I watched the news destroy her reputation day after day. Her face was everywhere. People wrote comments, discussed her downfall, picked apart every detail of her lies. She became an outcast. She could no longer appear in town because everyone knew what she was trying to do. She lost her friends, her connections, the opportunity to start over. I had achieved my goal. I survived. I won. But why did I still feel uneasy? Why did something inside me tell me that this was not the end? The first warning. A week had passed. I was back to my usual life. My partners no longer doubted me. The business had stabilized. I felt in control of my future again. But on Friday night, I received a strange call. The number was hidden. At first, I wanted to ignore it, but something made me pick up the phone. "Hello, my love." I felt my body tighten at the phrase. Her voice, calm, soft, but there was something different about it, something that made me freeze. "What do you want?" I replied coldly. She laughed. "Oh, you didn't think it would end that easily, did you?" I remained silent. I could have just run away and accepted defeat, but I didn't. Her voice was quiet, but filled with a kind of poisonous confidence. "Because I haven't shown you my final move yet." I clenched the phone in my hand. "I destroyed you. You have nothing left." She paused. "Do you think so?" And then I heard her add quietly, "If I were you, I would look out the window." I stood up abruptly and pushed back the curtains. The street was dark. The streetlights lit the empty road, but I saw a car, black without license plates. It was parked directly in front of my house. I couldn't see anything through the tinted glass, but I knew she was there. "Do you think you can scare me?" "No, my love, I don't want to scare you." Her voice deepened. "I want you to feel the same way I felt when you destroyed me." I didn't answer. "I won't come back into your life, but I will make sure you never know I'm gone for good." She paused and whispered, "I am your nightmare, and I am always there now." The line went dead. I stared at the car for another minute, and then it started the engine and slowly disappeared into the darkness. I gritted my teeth. This was her last game. Now she didn't want to destroy me physically. She wanted to destroy me psychologically. And I knew, if I didn't stop her now, she would never stop. I accepted the challenge. I couldn't let her play by her rules anymore. I got in the car and drove in the direction she had disappeared. She couldn't hide anymore. This was my last chance to settle everything once and for all. I didn't know how this would end, but I knew that this time she wouldn't come back. This game must end, but only one of us will win. I drove down the dark road, following her car. She was no longer hiding. She wanted me to find her. She was leading me to the place where it was all going to end. I had no doubt. This time she planned more than just a threat. This time she really wanted to finish me off. I gripped the steering wheel, forcing myself to focus. I knew I was playing a dangerous game, but I was ready. If I didn't do anything today, she would haunt me forever. I had to put an end to it. Her final trap. She led me to an old abandoned house outside the city. It was the perfect place for her final move. No witnesses, no cameras, no chance of help. She got out of the car first and slowly walked inside. I turned off the engine, took out my phone, and quickly texted the detective. "If I'm not out in 30 minutes, find me here." I wasn't a fool. I knew I couldn't trust her. And if she decided to strike a final blow, I would make sure that blow turned against her. I took a deep breath and got out. The darkness around me was almost unnatural. I entered the house and saw her. She was standing in the center of the room, lit by the dim light of an old lamp. Her face was calm. Her gaze was cold. "You came after all," she whispered. "You wanted this, didn't you?" She smiled. "Yes, I wanted it to end the way it should have." I slowly took a few steps forward. "So what do you want? If you have some last-ditch plan, now is the time to show it." She tilted her head. "I don't want to kill you." Her words made me tense up even more. "I want you to destroy yourself." Her last game. She slowly pulled out her phone and showed me the screen. It had a video on it. My video. Me, standing over her partner in the restaurant, threatening him. Me, pressuring him, forcing him to give up. Me, blackmailing him. "You didn't think you were the only one who knew how to play these games, did you?" She paused, savoring my reaction. This is a hidden camera. If I release it, everyone will know that you are not so pure, that you have manipulated, blackmailed, forced people to obey you. She took a step closer. "You won one battle, but now you stand here and realize that I can still win the war." I felt anger rise inside me. "What do you want?" She moved closer. "I want you to live with this fear, to know that at any moment I can destroy you." I looked at her, and suddenly I understood. She didn't want to just erase me. She wanted to make me her prisoner. She wanted me to wake up every day and not know when my end would come. This wasn't a game of life and death. This was a game of control. And that's when I realized her plan had a weak spot. The final blow. I smiled slowly. She frowned. What? You think I'm afraid of this information? Her eyes widened. You think I didn't realize you'd try something like this? I pulled out my own phone and pressed a button, and then her face changed. The recording of our conversation was already live. I had her say it all on camera. Her threats, her admission that she was playing against me, her true nature. She lunged at me, trying to snatch the phone away, but it was too late. The recording was already out. People had seen it. The police would see it. Everything she tried to do would now be her sentence. She stopped, breathing heavily. I saw the true horror in her eyes. You won. I took one last step forward and whispered, I won when you decided to come back. She said nothing more. She just stood there, looking at me brokenly. I turned and left. The police were already waiting outside. I didn't turn around when I heard them enter the house. I just got in my car and drove away. This time she would really disappear, and I would never live in her shadow again. She's gone. But can you completely erase someone from your life? I sat in my office, watching the news on my laptop screen. She had disappeared from my life, just as she had wanted to disappear from mine. The headline screamed about her arrest. Woman who tried to destroy her husband is detained by police. Game over. The end of a scandalous story. Betrayal, poisoning, manipulation. Now she can't escape. I had won. I had survived. I had destroyed her. But why was I still not relieved? What was left of this war? I had regained my reputation. My business was working again. I could live in peace again. But deep down I knew she had left a mark. Every time I saw someone smile, I thought, is this real sincerity or a game? Every time someone told me, I trust you, I remembered how I trusted them. Every time I sat down at the table, I automatically thought about the poison in the food. She was no longer there, but she poisoned my life in a different way. Her last trace of my life. I tried to forget her, but sometimes I caught myself thinking, what if I never meet a woman I can trust again? What if this story stays with me forever? I knew I had to move on. But anyone who has ever encountered a person who knows how to play with your mind knows that after that, you will never be the same again. I was no longer the person who had thought her marriage was perfect a month ago. I was no longer the man who had once loved her. I had become the one who had survived the most dangerous game. And I had won. But could I live as if nothing had happened after that? Final freedom. I decided to change my life. Sell the house where we lived. Get rid of everything that reminded me of her. Change the city. Change the job. I no longer wanted to look back. I no longer wanted to feel her shadow behind me. I started everything from scratch. And only when I stepped out onto the street of a new city where no one knew me or my story did I finally feel it. True freedom. I won. And this time, for good, I thought I had won. I thought this story was over. But real monsters don't disappear forever. 3 months passed. I left everything behind. I sold the house, got rid of everything that reminded me of her. I started a new life in another city, far from the place where she tried to destroy me. I no longer woke up in the middle of the night in fear. I no longer checked my food before eating it. I no longer lived with the constant anxiety that she was still somewhere nearby, because I was sure that she would never come back. But I was wrong. She came back. And this time she didn't hide. Her shadow appeared again. It happened one evening. I was walking home when I saw her. She was standing outside the house, looking calmly at me. Her hair was shorter, her face haggard, but her eyes were as cold as the day she tried to kill me. I felt a rush of heat. I was sure she was in jail. I had seen the police take her away. How was that possible? I moved closer, forcing myself not to show fear. What are you doing here? She smiled slowly. I just wanted to see how you live. I gritted my teeth. How did you get out? She shrugged. Things fall apart if you know how to manage them. I felt anger boiling inside me. I had put so much effort into destroying her, and it was all for nothing? Don't worry. Her voice was gentle, almost soothing. I'm not here to get revenge. I didn't believe her for a second. She always lied. And if she showed up, she had a plan. Her last gift. She handed me a small black envelope. I didn't take it. What is this? Just a reminder of me, she answered calmly. I don't need anything that reminds me of you. Oh, believe me, I do. I tore the envelope from her hand and opened it. There was a letter inside. And as I began to read, my mind reeled. I was pregnant. By you. But you destroyed me faster than I could tell you. I reread those words. My brain refused to accept them. That's a lie. She tilted her head. You always say that. But what if this time it's not? I wanted to tear up the letter. I wanted to throw it away and forget it. But deep down I knew, if there was even a chance it was true, I would never forget those words. She had won again. She hadn't come to kill me. She had come to stay in my thoughts forever. I couldn't be sure. But now I couldn't just erase her from my life. She knew it, and that was why she smiled as she turned and walked into the darkness. This time she didn't run. She knew that now I would be the one to find the answers. She thought this time she could destroy me from the inside. But I'm not the person she can control anymore. I watched her back as she walked away, leaving me with this letter, her last game, her last chance to cling to my life. I slowly reread those words. I was pregnant. By you. But you destroyed me faster than I could tell you. My heart wasn't pounding. My mind wasn't in chaos. I just knew she was lying again. I tore the paper in half. Not this time, bitch, I whispered to myself. I took out my phone and dialed a familiar number. Hello, I need your help. Her lie was exposed in a day. I knew she couldn't prove her words. But this time, I wasn't in just wait. I contacted the detective who had worked for me before. Within 24 hours, he had given me all the information. Black small square she wasn't pregnant. Never. Black small square no hospital records. No evidence of any treatment. Black small square this was her last deception. I smiled when I got the report. This time she had made a fatal mistake. She thought she could leave me with doubts, with poison in my mind. But she didn't know one thing. I had learned to play better than she did. And now I decided that her true end had come. Final destruction. I knew she was still in town. I knew she was waiting for me to break. I called her myself. You were right, I said when she picked up the phone. She held her breath for a second. I knew you couldn't just let this go, she replied. Let's meet. Where it all began. She agreed. I could feel her triumphant smile, even over the phone. But she didn't know that this time I had planned everything better than ever. The last meeting. Her last words. I arrived early and took a seat where I could see everything. She showed up at 8 sharp. Defiant. Confident that she was in control again. I knew you weren't as cold as you tried to seem, she whispered, sitting down opposite me. I smiled. I knew something too, like that you lied again. Her smile faded. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and thrust it in front of her. The detective's report. The documents. The evidence. Her face changed. For the first time in a while, she looked scared. For the first time, she didn't have a script to follow. What do you want to do? I leaned closer and said in a flat voice, this time you're going to disappear. Completely. If you ever come into my life again, I'm not just going to destroy you socially. I'm going to make sure you can't stay in any city. The whole truth about you is going to be out in the open, and I'm going to personally make sure everyone knows who you are. Her lips tightened, her fingers trembling. She knew there was nowhere else to run. I'm going to make sure you never have anything again. Did you think you could control me? No. Now it's up to me to decide when the game ends. I stood up and looked her up and down. And it ends now. She didn't answer. She couldn't. I didn't give her another chance to manipulate me. I just walked away, leaving her there. And this time she really did disappear. Please subscribe to our channel Stellar Stories. We have new amazing stories coming out every day. Thank you.